Hey guys, what's up? It's Chase Jarvis, founder and CEO of Creative Live. You all know that we have more than 2,000 classes and more than 10,000 hours of learning, inspirational, and motivational content on the platform. I'm super excited to announce a new experience on Creative Live. It's called Fast Class. You've told us that you're busy and sometimes it's hard to dive into a full class from start to finish. So essentially, we're now giving you a shortened highlight version of our top Creative Live classes. You can always dive into the full class with 5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. This is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on Creative Live? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creative Live. I'm your host, Kenna Klosterman, and we are so thrilled for you to join us here on Earth Day. It is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which is quite an incredible milestone. We are here coming to you from our living rooms to yours. If you are just tuning in to creativelive.com/TV for the very first time, we launched a couple of weeks ago to be able to, again, reach you during these challenging times from the kitchens, living rooms, home studios of people all over the world, of our creators and entrepreneurs who are doing incredible things right now to help entertain, inspire, and help all of you out there wherever you are. And we want to, of course, give a shout out to all of the frontline workers who are truly making such an impact right now and doing incredible work. We hope that you are healthy and well, as well as all of your loved ones out there. And so today we are having a couple of shows live here on Creative Live TV, and now I am super excited for you to join me as we record live an episode of our We Are Photographers podcast with our very special guest, Roger Fishman. Before we get started, I want to again invite you to join the conversation. We have Kate on our social media team who is interacting with you folks, whether it is you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we are, or of course, right here on creativelive.com/TV, you can join the chat. And we, of course, always love to hear where it is that you are tuning in from. We have people, again, all over the world. So once again, thank you for being here. This is our Creative Live podcast called We Are Photographers, where we connect you with incredible photographers, filmmakers, industry game changers, and really get into their stories and what connects us all as humans. We're not talking gear. We are not talking necessarily craft, but it's really about who we are as humans. And so Roger Fishman, we are so excited to have him here on Creative Live for the very first time. He is a world-renowned photographer who has literally traveled to the ends of the earth to do incredible work to bring us beautiful fine art photography and films to places such as Greenland, Antarctica, places where most of us would never be able to see. And so let me bring on Mr. Roger Fishman. Thank you so much for being here with us, Roger,
Sure.
on
Thank you for
Earth
having
Day.
me. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and speak with all your audience as well.
Fantastic. Now, first, before starting, again, we're recording this during quarantine times. Where are you joining us from? How are you? How is your family? Just want to make sure that we acknowledge that and make sure you're okay.
Thank you for asking. My family is safe and well. And to your point earlier, I just want to say thank you to all the frontline workers. That includes people working at the grocery stores, people working at pharmacies, gas stations, obviously at the hospitals, everywhere. People are literally putting their lives on the line for all of us. And that I want to say a special thanks to that. That's an extreme amount of dedication. And I know we appreciate, and I think everyone really appreciates all those folks who are typically the invisible people who are actually incredibly visible right now and exceptionally and more important than ever. So I just want to thank them and hope that they stay safe and stay well.
Yes, thank you for that. And again, it's people who, moving forward, hopefully we will all appreciate even more as well. Well, Roger, I want to start by saying congratulations on some of the new short films that you have been releasing this week. I know that Conservation International has been playing them and releasing them on their Instagram. And so tell us a little bit about the film that we are going to or show everybody now to introduce them to your incredible work.
Well, thank you. The whole premise is to celebrate and honor Mother Earth, because essentially, and we all know this, she creates life, she sustains life, she enables us to have air, right, oxygen, food, everything that we need. So I wanted to create a series of short films and connect people to Mother Earth in a new and different way, and to work with amazing musical artists who have a dedication and commitment to the environment, to the planet, and to the goodness that exists. So that's the origin. And so I took my film work from Greenland and Iceland, Namibia, Antarctica, and a range of other places. I work with some phenomenal musical artists. I mean, one is the world-renowned Herbie Hancock. Another amazing band is called Health. Today, you'll be seeing a special short film from Portugal the Man. We have two more coming up from Agnes Obel and Ellie Zaveda, plus a few more coming down in the next few weeks. So it's been a privilege to work with them, their management, and hopefully these videos connect people, soothe people, and inspire people, and get them a chance to see what so few of us get to see, and to see what's worth protecting and fighting for.
Connect, soothe, and inspire. I love that. And again, want to give a special shout out to Portugal the Man, who allowed us to play this film of yours here today. So let's see the film.
All right.
just do as you do. Yeah, you do as you please, and that's all you can do. That's all you can do. I don't know how we're created, but I know that I know we'll die, know we'll die. Open up your arms and hold on to everything you own that owns you too, and just let it all go. 'Cause we do as we please, and that's all we can do. That's all we can do. I don't know how we're created, but I know that I know we'll die, and that's all we can do.
Wow. Roger, it's absolutely stunning. I've watched this now multiple times, and take us to a helicopter and actually what it feels like to be seeing this with your own eyes. I mean, I know you were in Greenland, Antarctica, and Namibia for this particular film, but maybe it's tell us about the first time that you saw this kind of vantage point and what it meant to you.
You know, years ago, I used to focus primarily on wildlife, which I love because I love that human connection when you can see how we all are part of the same environment. And then about 2.5, 3 years ago, my colleague, Melissa, showed me a photo of Iceland from the sky. And it just completely stopped me. I mean, emotionally and spiritually, I just was like, what is that? And so I canceled the trip actually to Africa. And I went to Iceland and just started flying with some amazing pilots. And I fell completely in love because it changes your whole perspective in life to see Mother Earth, who is the greatest artist of all time, to see her from the sky. And then my job is to sort of try to design it. And, you know, we fly with the door off, obviously, and we're constantly banking. The first time, a couple of times, seatbelts came off, which were not great. So we had to get a new system in place. But it is truly remarkable to be above and to feel this deep. It's a spiritual connection. It's not even a creative connection. It's something so spiritual because you see the designs and the patterns, and then you feel like there's a treasure being revealed to you, a gem being revealed by Mother Earth, because you're going above and literally beyond, and these revelations come to you. So I always feel like the more you wonder about things, the more wisdom you get, and that's what aerial work allows me to go do.
Take me a little bit further into the spiritual aspect and the wonder and the awe. Like, do you feel that physically in your body? What's the experience for you?
Oh, it's a great question. Well, you're very vulnerable in the sky. I mean, the truth is we're vulnerable in life. This pandemic is showing that to us, right? You can be on the ground, you can be anywhere, and we're all vulnerable. So when you're in a helicopter, to me, and to see planet Earth this way, you realize both your connection, but you also realize your smallness. You realize how insignificant you are in the big scheme of things because you're just floating, right? You're flying and floating. And at the same time, you realize how important Mother Earth is to you, and then how your loved ones are. It's a cycle that keeps reinforcing itself. And so when you see these colors and these patterns and these designs and these textures, and you realize how small you are, you just have context philosophically and emotionally and creatively about what exists. So, when I'm in Greenland or Iceland, I see a lot of obviously ice and water, but you also see these amazing landscapes, these mountains that reach into the sky. And as humans, we're told to be strong, be tough, reach into the sky. But I feel like there's a pattern that the mountains and landscapes get worn down by weather and snow and ice and water. And eventually, we all become a speck of sand, like the sand I saw in Namibia. So it's a cycle of life that I see. But in Namibia, when I was just there recently, those specks of sand seem so insignificant. But when there's trillions upon trillions and trillions of them together, they become these beautiful designs, this beautiful architecture that is shaped by the wind, shaped by the land. And you realize that it is those specks together, humans together with other wildlife and all of the planet, that's where we're the strongest. So we want to be the mountains because we're taught to be the mountains, right? To be strong and invulnerable. But the truth is, we are all vulnerable and we are all connected. And so all these experiences bring me to that both obvious but powerful connection back to planet Earth and to the universe.
I think that message is so important. And I think that right now, at this time, we are all as humankind realizing how vulnerable we all are once again. And again, today being Earth Day, there's so much reflection that hopefully people are experiencing again during this time. And as I was looking again at your imagery and reading your posts on Instagram, you're an incredible writer, author, poet, I would say. And you made a statement that really struck home to me because and I'm just going to read, let's protect Mother Earth, not because she needs our protection, but because we need her, and so do future generations. And a lot of the time, I personally am thinking like, oh, we need to, save the environment, save nature for nature's sake. But then you come back around to, well, we need to, it's really for our own survival. So can you talk to me more about that?
Well, a lot of people talk about saving the planet. The planet's 4.5 billion years old, give or take a few 100 million years. It's going to be here as it was before without us and after us. It's a big rock, and underneath it's got this molten eruptions taking place. So it lives with or without us. It exists with or without us. But the power of what is created, I believe, from our planet and our universe is the ability to have life. And the only way to have a healthy life is to have a healthy home. And I always say to people, you wouldn't take your apartment or your house and leave all your trash in it. You wouldn't leave your dirty laundry everywhere. You wouldn't leave your dishes everywhere. You take it out and you put it outside. Why? Because you want your home to be clean and safe and beautiful and relaxing and calming. Well, Mother Earth is our home. And the more we trash it, the more we hurt ourselves. Mother Earth, honestly, is going to be here with or without us. But the more that we protect and preserve what is created and have a deep connection to it, the more that it's good for us in all life. It's good for the trees, it's good for the plants, it's good for the insects, it's good for grass, but it's also good for us. So that is really what I was saying about we need her to be healthy, not for her sake, but for our sake and all life's sake.
And I think shifting that perspective is a lot of times people need things to be personal for them to actually look and act differently. And I just think that's what's so powerful for me about your work as well, is seeing a different perspective, seeing glaciers melting. And just it's I think that's the power of photography for me, is that we're able to put ourselves and put people in places that they wouldn't otherwise be. How have you seen the places that you've been returning to from the sky change over time? What is that, and how has that affected you in the way you approach your own life?
Uh, for me, I talk with everybody, locally. I Skype with people now in Greenland and in Iceland and Namibia and Kenya. People are just coming back from Antarctica. So I get sort of, I call it qualitative, longitudinal perspective, but it's qualitative, to be very blunt. And clearly the patterns are changing. And the gentleman in Greenland who I was just speaking with was saying, look, the birds are changing when they're coming in and migrating, where the wildlife is migrating. Obviously, the ice is being frozen later and being thinner. So there's a lot of changes. And, creatively, you can focus on a moment in time, right, with a photograph. And so what I try to do is capture this moment in time photographically, and also with film, and then try to revisit these places because the change is dramatic. Last year in Greenland, we were at the most northern part of Greenland, and I believe planet Earth, Cape Jessup Norris. And typically it's about between 29 and 43 degrees, historically speaking. And on that day, it was 73 degrees, 73. I put shorts on in the most northern part of Greenland. So it's definitely changing. And what I'm trying to do with my art, and I think of myself as more of a designer of what I see, is to let people engage with our planet, but different ways. One is just emotionally. Like I sort of got 3 tiers emotionally. How does it make them? Because I shoot straight down usually out of a helicopter. The reason I do that is to eliminate any familiarity, any context that our brain recognizes. So I want people to respond to Mother Earth, just pure emotions like, oh, I love the color, I love the design, whatever that is. The next level, if they want to go there, is now, what is it? And so I don't give my photographs specific names. I want people to use their own imagination, because as adults, we're not encouraged to use our imagination. We are as children, but not as kids. So I want to encourage people to do that. And the third tier, if people want to go there, it can be just pure beauty. It can be, what is it? The third level is really philosophical and reflective, is what does it mean to me? And what does it mean to me about myself and my place in the planet? And so I always say to people, if you like it because it's got pretty colors, fantastic. If it goes great with your couch, beautiful. If you like what it means to you in your imagination, beautiful. But if it means something more deep, that's equally as wonderful. So that's what I try to use my art to allow people that time to connect with themselves as well as with the planet.
I think it's so important, your comment about we lose our imagination as adults. And as children, all we have is our imagination. We're living in the world in a very different way, an emotional way versus a mental way. And so I would love to now go back in time to Roger as a child and talk about how did your childhood influence your early life and the way you approached life in that time?
It's a great question. A quick summary is I have 2 older sisters. One's 6 years older, one's 4. My parents, my mother was an orphan twice. My father was a twin, he had a twin sister. And my parents essentially should never been married, but they got married. So it ended up being a horrific marriage and an even more horrific divorce. So that put us into many, many difficult situations when they were together, and as well as afterwards. So it influenced me a lot of degrees. And one is about being able to give back, practically giving back, because you realize when people don't have a stable home environment, what that means to them then, but also for the future. So that's an important part of what I learned. And I also learned from an elementary school teacher, and I wrote about this recently, who saw that I was on food stamps, knew that I wasn't using them because I was too embarrassed, and had me come to the nurse's office, and she gave me a quarter. And she said, look, this is your quarter. This is for you to have lunch. No one else will ever know, but it's yours. You have to eat lunch. You have to come here every day. And she did it in such a dignified way that as a very young boy, I'm not sure I even realized how powerful it was what she was doing. So that's always made me, to this day, when I do my sort of philanthropic work, is to want to make sure people have food and basic health care. Also, I realized with having no money, that influenced where I was going to go in my life. So I started looking for jobs early on when I was 10, 11, 12, because we didn't have money. And then when I got to college, I was like, I need to get a job. So I left any creative possibility for a profession because that wasn't the world I lived in. I thought, and this is nothing wrong, I thought I was going to end up, having a minimum wage job. I didn't know what the possibilities were. No one showed me. That wasn't in my universe. And so I think possibilities and exposure to other people about what's possible is one of the greatest gifts I can give to others. I try to give to my son, and then hopefully enable people to go decide what that possibility is they want to pursue. So I went to the business world, and then eventually I entered the creative world. But it was because, honestly, I didn't like being poor, and I didn't want to be poor growing up.
I think that right now, also, I mean, people are experiencing lack in a way that a lot of people in this country haven't. And then people who have are experiencing it even more. And that's, I had read your story that you posted about your school teacher and this concept of living on the edge, living on razor's edge. Is that what you had called it? Are there other times in your life where you have felt that way? I mean, it's so interesting how we're steered from childhood to pursue different things, and then there are moments where we come back around to maybe what is always in our heart. But are there other times that you can tell us about sort of this concept of living on the edge?
Yeah, look, there was domestic violence in my household too. My father lived downstairs, my mother lived upstairs, we lived upstairs, and they would fight and scream and threaten each other and want each other dead, essentially. And as a little boy, that's frightening, because all you have in life, we all need safety, mental, emotional, physical safety. That allows us to be our best selves. But I didn't really have that. So you never knew when the eruptions would take place. And as a little kid, it's just the truth, I would hide under the bed sometimes because I wanted to bury myself. It was so scary. So, to me, it was about trying to have a different life than that. And how was I going to go do that? And then, my parents had this horrific divorce. The judge asked me in front of my parents, who did I want to live with? Trust me, never a win-win for anybody in that case. And then my parents got divorced. I was with my mother and sisters. And then not long after, maybe 2 years later, my father died of a heart attack. So, it gives you, for me, I always feel like I want to learn from everything. It doesn't mean the pain doesn't exist. It means you take it with you, but you learn from it, you listen to your heart, and then you go forward. And so I took everything that happened and have tried to apply that. Obviously, to my marriage, to being a good father. And also, I realized that I wanted to live a life that was most true to me. So as I was encouraging my son to do that, I realized I wasn't quite doing that. I had worked at big corporations. I had my own very successful production business and consulting business for Fortune 100 companies. But I wanted to be connected to the world. That's where I feel the most alive and the most inspired in terms of creative opportunities. So I walked away. I decided to do what I call a life 180. I left behind a very successful business because I felt there was something more important, more purposeful, more intentional for me in my life. So that's sort of a quick arc of how I got to where I am.
I often ask people what the biggest risk that they've ever taken in their life was. And I would imagine that would be one of them from a sort of career and, standpoint. And yet you have taken many a risk in your travels and adventures as well, in terms of the encounters that you have had. Watching video clips of you with the penguins and the wind and all of that. I mean, tell us about those types of risks that you have put yourself in. And do you think that whether it's your childhood or sort of stepping away, leaping from the corporate world, has sort of allowed you to embrace those risks in a different way that other people might not?
It's a great question. Let me go back one step, which is the risks I take are by choice, right? They're to pursue something that's so important to my heart, to me creatively and spiritually. But truthfully, they're not real risks. The people literally at the hospitals are taking the real risks. The people at the grocery stores who are dealing with hundreds and thousands of strangers every single day are taking real risks. They're putting their life on the line. So I really don't believe I'm taking that risk. Yes, could something happen? Absolutely. Has something almost happened in a helicopter where I was very fearful? Yes. But I put myself in that position. And as a friend of mine said to me about a year ago, I texted him from the helicopter. I said, look, I'm really scared. Ridiculous headwinds, 100 knots. It was rainy. We're turbulence all over the place. And this is my best friend from high school. And he said to me, he said, well, you made the decision. Now, my first thought was, that's not really very supportive in my moment of fear. And I had a few other thoughts, which I won't tell you, but I texted him. But I always want to have context, which is why it's important to me to really say it's a choice. I enjoy it. I do have fear. But the real people every single day are the people right now who risk their lives for us, really picking strawberries, delivering goods. I mean, I can't imagine that risk where you think I might come home and I might have something that literally kills me. I might have something that I could infect my family with. That's real risk. So I want to answer your question, but I want to have context. Mine is measured, intentional, and a luxury problem risk, if that makes sense.
It does, and thank you for clarifying or for putting it that way, because I also believe that we live at choice, and it's a way of approaching life. So I will ask you later what you texted, what your response to that text was. But
only if it's okay to swear on your show.
Not at the moment. Well, I'll ask you after. But take us to some of these really extreme experiences that a lot of people aren't able to put themselves in, whether that's intentional choice, if you will, because even being able to experience that virtually through somebody else, I think is such a valuable experience. So maybe I know you talked about crawling toward a mother cheetah and her cubs in Kenya. Take us to that experience.
I believe in intimacy. I believe in intimacy with your subject because you feel differently when you're connected. And for me, that's not usually with a super long lens. I feel the closer I get to anything, the more that I understand it emotionally, and I can design in my eye and in the camera or the drone what I want to capture, because it's so important to share back. And I want people to feel as closely as possible what I feel, knowing that they're not in the helicopter, they're not, someplace remote, but I want them to feel as much as they can, which is why I also try to write about my experiences. So in the cheetah one, we just kept crawling and I kept crawling, and I kept saying to my guide, "Are you sure this is safe?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, no one's ever gotten hurt before by a cheetah." I go, "But has anyone ever done this before with the cheetah?" He's like, "Well, that's a different question." So sometimes I think, I always say there's a fine line between risk and stupidity, and it depends upon the outcome. But like in Greenland, for example, my first trip, we flew from Iceland to Greenland over the Denmark Sea. And that was about a 4.5-hour flight in a helicopter over the open water, wearing a survival suit after taking a helicopter underwater emergency training class with oil rig workers. Because if you're over the open ocean and you have a crash, controlled or uncontrolled, you're pretty much on your own.
What's the
So,
survival suit? What's it, what does that mean?
it's like
even?
think of it as a hardcore dry suit, but with even more, no pun intended, because it's literally true, bells and whistles, because there's whistles, there's everything with you, there's lights, and you have a raft with you, so if you crash, you can throw it out and then pull yourself into it. So that was by itself, took a lot of training, a lot of logistics, a lot of planning. And then we flew all the way, circumnavigated Greenland. That was 2 times. And so you feel when you're flying over Greenland and you're looking down on it, the scale of it it's almost overwhelming. And the beauty of it is so inspiring. And you realize how truly insignificant you are. Like you can be going 100 knots per hour, 120, and it feels like you're standing still because it's so vast. So to go to these remote places and to be able to make sure you get fuel and then be able to know you have a place to stay or just eating your freeze-dried food, you plan as much as you can. You plan for the best, obviously, and you hope for the best, but you have to also plan for the worst. And so when Greenland, it's so remote that you have to say, is there going to be fuel? Is there going to be food? Is there going to be a place to sleep? And is it safe? So we have to go through it step by step by step. And then each day we're reevaluating based on what happens with the weather. So I love it because there's complete uncertainty of what you'll see, where you'll be, what the weather will be like, what will happen when you're out. There's nothing certain. And I love that because that talks about possibilities versus probabilities. And that creatively is something that excites me.
Possibility versus probability. I want to talk more about that concept. Where else in your life have you sort of gone with possibility over probability?
In my career, I probably have been at almost 10 different companies. And the notion was that I wanted to go towards something. I wanted to create a better future. But clearly when you leave something which is more of a probability, you're investing and betting on yourself, which is the best bet in life and the only bet in life, because if you don't bet on yourself, nobody else will. And then you look, how do I create a better future? And that's what possibilities are about. There's no guarantees. So I found that I was always in that mindset. In fact, when I first moved to New York, this is many decades ago, my first 10 months, I was broke. I was completely broke. I had no money. I lived in eight different places in 10 months. And one person, I had to leave where I was staying after a few days. And they were like, okay, I need you to leave. I'm like, okay. And I had all my belongings in 2 brown paper bags. And I went outside and it was nighttime and it was pouring rain. So my brown paper bags, which were essentially my suitcase, literally started disintegrating in my hands. And I'm thinking, now, where am I going to go now? And all of this, even my childhood, all this trains you to be flexible, to learn how to figure things out. So now even when I'm in a helicopter, my camera's not working, and I'm someplace remote, I've got to just go figure it out. So I think there's a pattern to my life of the possibility creates a different mindset, a different openness, and a different fluid approach versus the probability of here's the answer, here's what we're going to go do, here's when we're going to go do it. That's not what nature's way of being is. Nature doesn't work that way. You work around nature. And so I really love the aerial work because it allows me to be comfortable in the uncertain, the unclear, the unknown, and the possible.
Well, I think that's where creativity is born. Again, it's when I think as creatives we are problem solvers. As photographers, we are problem solvers, and you're approaching life and the world, like you said, with the concept of possibility. I think that's a really beautiful way to think about it. And I want to ask you about how you feel alive. Right now, maybe you were going to be in some other part of the world if we weren't all staying at home during this pandemic. But What do you do in your daily life at home that may allow you to have that same feeling of aliveness or finding that creative juice, if you will, in your backyard, technically,
Right.
figuratively speaking?
Well, there's two sort of answers to that question. One is, I spend a lot of time, typically, and even more so now, with my family. So, for example, this morning, I know my son loves blueberry muffins, so I baked blueberry muffins. He added a little touch, and my wife added a little touch. So we just spend time creating and doing things together. And I play basketball every day with my son. And truthfully, there's not a photograph I've ever taken, a film I've ever shot, a project I've ever done that's more rewarding, more powerful, more deeply meaningful than just like hanging out with my family and watching my son have the childhood I didn't have. For me, to be able to give him a safe, loving, enabling environment and to watch his joy and to watch his creativity is so beautiful that there's nothing else I've done that is powerful as that. Nothing. So that's what I do. And the second thing I do is every day I do work. So I've these videos that we talked about, the short film series. Not only did I have to create the idea, but then we had to find Melissa, who works with me. Melissa Shoemaker is amazing on all fronts. Without her, I don't exist. And we have some other, no, it's true. We have some other amazing editors that we've worked with. So that took a lot of work. But then you have to deal with artists, artist managers, sometimes lawyers, their labels, and they've all been fantastic. They've all been like, oh, it's for the environment. We're in. So it's really been a remarkable creative focus and challenge because it's not been done before. These are all different. You have the greatest, perhaps jazz player of all time, Herbie Hancock, a great, amazing band, a heavy metal band called Hell. It's an amazing singer from Denmark, Agnes Obel. Portugal the Man just rocks like crazy, and they're so committed to the environment. And Elisa Veda, who did the piano solo, her voice is spectacular too. So you have all these great people. So that's been focusing my attention. And then I have a whole catalog, a whole library of work I'm just going back into. Plus, I just came back from Namibia, and I have fallen in love. First, it was with water, then it was with ice. I have fallen in love with sand, a speck of sand. So it's fascinating how your mind and your body and your energy and your creativity can be sparked by something as simple as a speck of sand. So I'm in love with sand.
I think that's so beautiful because I can see that in the film that we saw at the beginning of this broadcast. The movement is, and the constant change that is, it's sort of like without one's own power, if you will. Like you are at the whims of the wind and nature, and just like ice is, or just like water is. And like you said, that comes around to realizing that we're exactly the same, and in the billions and billions of years, and in the universe, we are those little specks, and it can change how you approach life. I'm curious how, because I know that, in addition to your work being absolutely gorgeous, that you've been able to work with and partner with some universities in terms of research by scientists with MIT, Columbia, Brown, UCLA. How have they been able to use your art in ways for research?
That's a great question. So I've had the privilege to collaborate with some amazing people. So for example, I was in Greenland a couple of years ago, and I saw a group of people talking, and I went up to this one gentleman and I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Boston." I said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Los Angeles." And I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Oh, I'm studying the Issawa Greenstone Belt." And I had that quizzical look like you just had. And he's like, "You never heard of the Issawa Greenstone?" I said, No. And so he goes, "Oh, we're studying when did planet Earth turn on electromagnetically." And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "This." That's that's all I'm doing. Just that at the right time, I hope. And so, long story short, uh, this is the oldest data rock that when the planet Earth turned on. He was studying. That night, I saw where they were flying out to where they were going to do the research. I said, "Can I have your GPS coordinates?" And he said, "Why?" I said, "Because I like my coffee black." And he didn't know what it meant. And so the next morning, we flew where he was with his colleagues, woke him up at 9 a.m. with a helicopter. I came out, and his name is Ben Weiss. He runs planetary sciences for MIT. And Ben has now become a very good friend. He's an amazing guy. And so we landed and we came up. And he's like, "Well, what are you doing here?" I said, "I told you, I like my coffee black." So we had some coffee. They told us about their research. And so this past year, I went back there and I flew my drone, did a film project for them. I've done some work with Larry Smith, who's now at Brown, that does planetary science work as well. Just released a new book yesterday. So there's a range of different people that I've just met, and I've reached out to them because I realized that what I was doing was unique. I'm circumnavigating Greenland, and I thought, how can I photograph and film things that might be of interest? So I'm working with Larry Smith from Brown, Kristen Ponar, University of Buffalo, Lincoln Pitcher at UCLA, Adam LeWinter up at the Army Corps of Engineers, Marco Tedesco at Columbia. So my whole feeling is I want to share as much as I can, because in this case, sharing is actually really helping because I have the access to something they don't, and they need it. So I just give them whatever they would like to use it whichever way they can.
As you're telling this story, and I'm kind of trying to visualize what it would be like to circumnavigate Greenland, I then had this thought of like you sitting in an office and sort of your corporate life. Like, would you ever have thought in those days that this would be what you were doing? And do you ever have those moments of going back to sort of, like, what if I had never taken this leap?
So, at many companies, they ask you at a retreat, like, if you weren't doing this job, what would you be doing? And I happen to always be saying, "Oh, I'd be traveling around the world taking pictures." So eventually, it's happened. So I never look back in terms of was that a good move or a bad move. History is history. The question is, how do we want to internalize it? How do we want to learn from it? And I've had successes and I've had failures, and a lot of hard times, but a lot of great times. And I look at everything as whatever's happened in the past has gotten me here. So that means it was all worth it. So I feel very fortunate now to be able to do what I do and share what I see, but also to connect people. I say to people, like, if you look at like hydrogen and oxygen, you get water. If you look at a sperm and an egg, you create essentially an embryo. Well, embryos become babies, they grow up. Water eventually becomes potentially a snowflake. It will become a glacier when it grows up. At some point, it splits off into an iceberg, right? It calves, it has its own child. As adults, we have our own child. It's the reason why they both happen with a lot of noise and pressure. And then as humans, right, we are often, they say, 10% is above. People can see us, but don't judge a book by its cover, right? Well, that's what we say about icebergs. 10% is above the surface, 90% is below, just like human beings. And over time, just like icebergs, we toss and we turn, we smooth out our rough edges, we learn and we grow, right? We're both influenced by what's on the outside that we can see, friends and family, but also what's inside, right? The currents, the water temperature, things that are happening. And at some point in time, the iceberg goes back to the ocean, right? And we go back to the land. So to me, I'm just trying to draw connections so people can see how we are literally all the same. And if we feel that, we can all say, well, wait a second, don't we also want to give everyone else the same gift of a clean air, oxygen, water, and access to a beautiful planet? So that's what I'm trying to do. And so I don't look back. I just feel like today is a great day and every day is a great day. Just some are better than others.
It really is such a powerful way to approach life, whether that is, like you said, approaching life at choice and approaching life that all we really have is now. Time doesn't actually exist. It's now and now and now.
Yeah.
And and like you said, it's feeling fortunate that we can experience the life through photography and share that with other people. I mean, that's what I love so much about the craft and talking to incredible artists like yourself, is it's a way of experiencing the world. For me, photography is the experience, and the images are the sort of nice to have as well.
Yes. And I also, to that point, I feel like when we have this gift to be able to do our art form that we love so much, is to, for me, so many people come with me. My grandparents are often with me, right? My father, my mother, who's still alive at 91, my sisters, obviously my wife and my son and my friends, some who have passed it or not. I feel like this whole energy with me. So I feel like when I'm out there, I'm honoring them as well. And I get to share with them. I get to share with everybody. And to me, sharing is about connecting, right? It's not about showing off. It's about connecting and then having a discussion or a feeling and a relationship around something that's greater than ourselves.
Earlier we were talking about seeing with the heart, and the way that you approach your work. And I pulled out one time from a magazine. It was an African proverb that was about, I think it's something like the eyes never forget what the heart has seen. So, final question for you: how do you see with your heart?
It's an excellent question. It's a feeling. It's always an innate, automatic feeling. When I fly in a helicopter, at one level, you have to think about what you want to photograph. But I can't think. It's impossible to think. You have to feel it. And so to me, it's like it's Carl Jung talks about the vocation, and it's a calling and it's a feeling. It's so overwhelmingly powerful, and that you'll do almost anything for it because it's your oxygen. And so I have to feel my art. I can remember everything after the fact where I was, but in that moment, I cease to exist as a human being because I'm so absorbed into the creative element and of planet Earth. So I think you have to just sort of feel with your heart, be absorbed into the moment, and let go of any precondition of right or wrong. It's just what feels best for you.
It's that pure presence, and that is that being alive. Where do you recommend people can, if they want to, again, coming back around to where today is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, what are some resources or places that you recommend people can further, I don't know, if they want to get involved or seek out how they can contribute with their art or what have you?
Sure. Well, I think there's different levels, right? Some of it just in our daily lives are the easiest, right? What can we refine a little bit differently? So I tend to take military style showers. The water goes on, the water goes off, I lather up, the water goes back on, and I wash off. So we all have the ability to influence our own behavior of what we do. That's one. Second is what's local. So in our cases, there's a lot of great organizations in Los Angeles. They're fixing trails so people can hike on them. This is obviously before the shutdown. So there are ways to volunteer that way. There's a lot of local nonprofits. And then there's amazing organizations like Conservation International, amazingly effective. NRDC, another amazingly effective organization. So it really depends upon your time, how much you have, how much energy, interest you have, and how you want to be involved. So the good news is it's actually pretty simple. You can do it starting at home.
Which today is where people need to do it. I love that. The military style shower. Again, it's the little things, and all these little things add up. Roger, I want to make sure that everybody knows where to find you, follow you, see your incredibly gorgeous work, films, all of it. Where can people connect with you?
Obviously on Instagram, it's just at Roger Fishman. My website, not exactly a genius name. It's just rogerfishman.com. It's the best I could do. It's all I got. And if anybody has any questions for me ever, honestly, they can email me. It's on my website. I'm glad to answer questions, glad to share whatever I can. So hopefully that'll be of help to people.
Well, thank you so very much, Roger, for being with us here today on Earth Day. And again, I highly encourage people to go check out the beautiful videos. Thank you again to Portugal the Man for allowing us to play that video. I definitely have questions for you about working with Herbie Hancock and all these incredible people. We could chat offline. But once again, I wish you an incredible, not only Earth Day, but want to thank you on behalf of the planet and our community for the work that you do.
Thank you. It's a privilege. And I hope everyone realizes every day is Earth Day.
Exactly. Beautiful way to end. Every day is Earth Day. Well, thank you again to Roger Fishman, and everybody. Want to make sure that you check out the schedule here on creativelive.com. Later today at 3 p.m. Pacific, we are going to be talking with another incredible photographer, filmmaker, activist, Philippe, and we can't wait. He's going to be coming to us from Costa Rica directly, which is super cool. He's like in the jungle, essentially. So we might hear monkeys and birds and all of that. But again, thank you everyone for tuning in here to creativelive.com/TV. And thank you again to Roger Fishman.
Thanks for having me.